Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This is a special press conference of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, Cdema, and the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, the CIMH. We're this afternoon going to take a look at the regional outlook on Tropical Storm Matthew. In studio with us today, we have Ms. Kathy Ann Caesar, the Chief Meteorologist that's from the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology. We have Mr. Ronald Jackson. He is the Executive Director of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, Cdema. And we also have Dr. Farrell, that's Dr. David Farrell. He is the Principal at the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As I indicated before, we are going to be talking about the outlook for Tropical Storm Matthew. Tropical Storm Matthew developed earlier today. And first of all, I'd like to start with you, Ms. Caesar, to give us an update as to what is taking place with Tropical Storm Matthew and what we can expect over the next couple hours.
Okay, so earlier this afternoon, just actually this morning, just about 11:30, the system was upgraded from a strong tropical wave to Tropical Storm Matthew. We would have been expecting this all night into this morning. The system at its lowest pressure did move over Barbados about 7 o'clock this morning. Conditions were relatively calm most of the night as we didn't experience every strong activity ahead of the storm. But as the day progressing, we're going to get some strong storms and thunderstorms, strong winds now up to 60 miles per hour, and that is now affecting us across Barbados as the storm now is moving towards St. Lucia and the St. Vincent area.
The outlook for Tropical Storm Matthew, what can we expect as it moves to the other countries? Is it likely to develop into a hurricane when it gets there or before it gets there? What can we expect?
Okay, the cone of probability and the projection is for the storm to move out into the Caribbean Sea. As it moves out into the Caribbean Sea, just to the southeast of Jamaica, the storm is expected to strengthen into a hurricane. And then the track makes a very sharp turn, projected turn, towards Jamaica and Hispaniola towards the weekend, on the weekend Sunday.
And you said that it can become a hurricane
Yes.
by when?
The projection is for it to become a hurricane on Saturday into Sunday.
Saturday into Sunday. I'd like to go over now to Dr. Farrell, Dr. David Farrell. We now are faced with Tropical Storm Matthew. What is the situation now given that we're faced with this storm?
There are some challenges from the perspective of impacts. And so we are looking at impacts in the Eastern Caribbean at the moment. We're looking at flooding, landslide in countries such as St. Lucia, some of the more mountainous islands in Barbados. We're looking at flooding in Barbados and potential landslides in areas such as the Scotland district may have some movement there as well. But the greatest concern from an impacts point of view is at the moment St. Lucia. Given the amount of rainfall that we expect to see in St. Lucia, and in some cases there is going to be somewhat intense rainfall that will occur in St. Lucia. There may be some rainfall as far north as Dominica, and so we are cognizant of that, and that we will have to pay attention in particular to those impacted areas following Erica to make sure that we don't have remobilization in some of these areas as well, but we also expect that there will be some impact to populations, and I'm certain Mr. Jackson will address those concerns as well. But we are expecting a number of impacts in St. Lucia. We will also get some impacts down into St. Vincent as well, and some parts of the Grenadines. Grenada has also already reported some heavy rainfall overnight as well, and there will be some impacts from that as well.
You seem to be concerned with St. Lucia quite a bit. How much rainfall do you anticipate this system can bring to St. Lucia?
We are expecting that we can see upwards from about 150 millimeters of rainfall up towards 300 millimeters of rainfall, possibly greater. But part of that is going to be, there will be embedded high rainfall activity within the rainfall bands that are going across St. Lucia. We're already seeing some of that already. In the next couple of hours, we will see some intense rainfall towards the south of St. Lucia, but it will eventually move towards the entire country as well, towards the north. In these countries, we have a number of gauges, rainfall stations, and water level gauges reporting in real time back to CIMH. So we are able to monitor the situation and have discussions with local authorities about the evolving situation, as well as Ms. Caesar would have pointed out that we are looking at the numerical models and the satellite images that are coming out as well, both regionally and from international sources.
Okay, Mr. Jackson, over to you now, because I'd like to find out, I understand that you have been in contact with the disaster emergency offices across the region, with most of them at least. Right. I'd like you to give us an update as to what it is they are saying is happening on the ground in their respective territories.
Well, we started yesterday talking to a number of them based on the information that was being provided to us by CIMH, and also monitoring the various actions that were being taken at the national level. Up until our last briefing meeting, which was at midday today, there were no reports of impact in any of the states. Now, that is consistent with the information that was being provided as the system itself traversed its pathway through the corridor between Barbados and the other islands in the windwards. We were monitoring from as low down as I would say to the north of Trinidad, all the way up to potentially challenging situations in St. Kitts and Nevis, trying to understand the changes that were occurring and ensuring that we were giving a wide enough coverage to the participating states that could be affected. So far, no reports, but we do anticipate with the changing scenario, the system being upgraded to Tropical Storm Matthew, and the outlook that CIMH has shared, we do expect that later on today, we might be receiving reports of localized incidents in some of these participating states, and you would have heard about them, potentially Grenada, potentially St. Vincent and the Grenadines, most certainly St. Lucia, and to the south of Dominica. So we have been in touch with these countries in particular, and we are looking now at the specific scenarios that could face them, and looking at the population centers, looking at the issues related to vulnerability, trying to understand what are the implications for the social infrastructure as well as the physical infrastructure that will help to inform their national response. That's the conversation that we're having with these countries now as they continue to experience an increase in activity, primarily rainfall in this regard. But more importantly, we're looking beyond the Windward and Leeward Islands into what may potentially occur later this week. Saturday going into Sunday, possibly Monday going forward, with the upgrade of the system to at least a Category 1 hurricane, maybe a Category 2, but we never know. The conditions, as CIMH has shared, are favorable for strengthening. And as we look at the systems, the national emergency management systems in Haiti in particular, we're considering whether or not we will have to mobilize to support Haiti. Jamaica may be a little bit stronger in terms of its national capacity, but it's a conversation we're going to be having with Jamaica, but most certainly providing some support for Haiti. TCI and the southern Bahamas are also called into focus. And as the system moves, certainly we are going to keep our eye on what's happening in Belize. So we are really focusing on all of the member states currently within the Windward Corridor, but then looking further in the week to the Northwestern Caribbean and probably the Far Western Caribbean as the system develops. We've already been talking to a number of our regional partners. CARFA has been placed on standby. They've identified personnel to support the regional team deployment. We've been in dialogue with the regional security systems, who is called on our behalf to activate the CARICOM Disaster Relief Unit. We have spoken to personnel to support our damage assessment and coordination teams, and also to support our operational deployment. And this is to ensure that at the national level, we can extend the coordination mechanism that may take place, given that they may become overwhelmed. Certainly in the case of St. Lucia, that's something we're considering, looking historically at what has happened before and what the conditions are in those particular islands. We've also spoken to our international partners, again, to see how we can leverage additional human resource support and specialized skills that may be required to do rapid assessment to inform the emergency relief operations, as well as the treating with early recovery issues. The University of the West Indies is also in dialogue with us in terms of the provision of engineers, civil engineers, to look at the assessment for bridges, roads, to really help the countries rapidly get a stock of what they may be facing in the aftermath, and also to inform the more detailed assessment that will come about to look at their recovery and reconstruction activities.
Okay, before I get you to talk to me further about what it is that Cdema is planning to do in terms of your rollout in the immediate aftermath of the storm in any one of the territories, I'd like someone, either you, Ms. Caesar, or Dr. Farrell, to tell me why is it the concern is so great for St. Lucia as compared to the other countries? Is it because the eye is expected to pass, or what could be termed the eye, because it's not yet, there isn't yet an eye, is expected to pass over St. Lucia directly? Just explain to me why such a great concern over St. Lucia as compared to any one of the other territories that have been placed on the storm warning.
When we look at the radar imagery coming out for the region at the moment, what we're seeing is a significant amount of rainfall east of St. Lucia. It is significantly more rainfall than we're seeing east of most of the other islands, for one. But also embedded in a lot of that rainfall, we see significant rainfall intensity. And as a result, we are a bit concerned when it comes to St. Lucia, given the mountainous terrain and the history of landslides in St. Lucia. And so when we look at the total volume, as well as potentially high intensity rainfalls embedded in that volume of rainfall, we have significant reason to be concerned about the situation that may evolve over St. Lucia. This is not to say that we aren't concerned about the other islands south of St. Lucia and north of St. Lucia, but at the moment, as we watch the radar feed from the Barbados Met Service, Martinique, Guadeloupe, in that particular area, we see reason to be extremely concerned about the situation evolving over St. Lucia.
Now, just for the benefit of our viewers across the region, the countries that have been placed on the storm warning have been Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Guadeloupe and Martinique, and Dominica. All of these countries have been placed on the storm warning. Now, to you gentlemen and lady, could you just, for the benefit of our viewers, explain to them what it is that's expected of them now, the citizenry? At this point in time, when there is a storm warning out for your territory, what are you supposed to have done before, and what are you supposed to be doing now?
Well, certainly stay indoors. I mean, that's the standard operating procedure. Once the warning is out, we ask the citizens to stay indoors. Pay attention to the radio, listen to the advisory both from your local meteorologists and your National Disaster Management Mechanism, which is led by the National Disaster Coordinator, who will help to address issues related to what's going on in the response, if there is a response, and also to give the all clear. We're encouraging persons not to go outside and to be milling about under these conditions. So standard operating procedure, stay inside, wait for the all clear. And that's what we want to reinforce at this point in time. For those countries that are not under warning, to pay keen attention to this storm as it develops, to ensure that you are ready prior to the arrival. We still have a tendency where the citizens wait until the last minute to prepare themselves and the family. For those countries in the Western Caribbean, Northwestern Caribbean, since we're speaking to the entire Cdema family of countries, that there is enough time for you to be prepared so that when the country calls for a shutdown, that the process is orderly, smooth, and things can be very efficient in terms of staging up the emergency operations teams to be able to focus on rescue, on evacuation if required, and to move the shelter facilities into a state of readiness in time to receive persons who could possibly be displaced. So pay attention to your national authorities, your Met Office, and your National Disaster Management Mechanism on how to proceed going forward.
Now, Cdema has been talking about, well, you've mentioned that Cdema has been speaking with its regional partners and with its international partners. How ready is Cdema for deployment of a team should there be need to do so? And what are the steps or the procedures that you're going to take to do that?
Well, I would say that we're pretty much ready to deploy. I mean, we've really heard from a number of the partners already on the persons they've provisioned to serve on the team. We're still collecting a few more names because we are focusing on potentially a multi-island scenario. Whilst our focus is still on St. Lucia, we are looking at a stepwise approach that there may be a need to provide at least some minimum support to Dominica should they require it, or should any of the other states require it. So we're ready to deploy to support these states. We will be having a briefing meeting with what we call the Eastern Caribbean donor partners for disaster management, just to go through the arrangements that are made ahead of the season, earlier in the year, in terms of what level of support they can consistently pledge to countries, whether there's a declaration or no declaration. And we're going to be meeting now to put some meat on the bone, so to speak, to really look at the socio-economic issues that are facing the countries under threat, the potential needs that may arise. We're talking with the Caribbean Development Bank, who supports with the emergency response grant resources to assist with some of those relief needs that may be required at the country level. So we've ramped up in preparation for deployment. We're hoping we don't have to, but certainly soon after the all clear, we want to be able to respond to the needs of St. Lucia should they require it. And it's a conversation that is happening now, but also as we look further afield to Haiti, who may potentially need us.
Now, this question would be for either one of our panelists from the CIMH. You cannot ignore the fact that technology is with us, it's part of us, it lives with us. And there are many of us who would go online and look at the radar and decide to be our own meteorologists. Is there any advice you would give to people who are bent on going online and checking the data online and attempting to apply it to their situation, probably not fully understanding or not knowing what it is they're doing? What is your advice to people like that?
Go ahead, Kathy. Yeah.
I'll start off with first, again, sometimes a little bit of knowledge could be dangerous, but what I would say is always to listen to the advice coming out of the meteorological services. They are the authority that will have this knowledge to look at that information and interpret it correctly. I'll just give you a little example of what can happen. Sometimes if you're looking at a satellite imagery, for example, the latest imagery that you see is not exactly what's happening now. That is usually old data. And a trained meteorologist would have the ability to take that information, interpret it, and project what could happen from it. So sometimes, again, it could be misinterpreted. And so that would my advice is that you can look at it. It will give you a fair idea, but again, listen to the authority and the message coming out of that authority. Dr. Farrell?
You wanted to add to some, Dr. Farrell?
Yes, I think I agree 100% with Kathy Ann. It is good that people are interested and people are curious. I think that is positive. And I think what people should do if they have questions or concerns is to direct the questions and concerns to the relevant authorities, but don't attempt to take matters into your own hands because you have read somewhere about something. I think it is extremely important that that knowledge that you may have acquired guides you in the correct direction to the relevant national source, and that you act with the information from the national source. Part of the problem is people acting individually on a piece of information they've gotten over here, another person acting with a piece of information they've gotten from another source. And the problem is that there's no coherence at times. And it is important that you listen to the national authorities to really get that discussion because it may save your life.
Okay, we do have members of the media here in Barbados in the studio with us. We've got a representative from the Nation newspaper and also from the CBC, the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation. But before we take questions from them, I would also like to ask you, for the benefit of the rest of the region, the weather seems to be ramping up now. As you can see, as you can hear behind you, the rain is coming down in torrents. I don't know if our viewers can hear that. On the roof, the rain is really pounding, the wind is howling outside, and the trees are doing their weather dance. How long can we expect the system to continue over Barbados or any one of the other territories, especially since we were told earlier today, or at least we heard through the media earlier today, that it was traveling very slowly?
Okay, so again, right now the current speed has it at, I believe, 20 miles per hour. That was the last that I saw. At that projection, I would actually say that the system should start to improve later this evening. I say after 7 o'clock and tonight. I think it will be a safe bet that we're prepared, that everyone stay indoors, and generally we start to wait for the all clear coming into tonight into tomorrow, once the system starts to die down gradually.
And this is only for Barbados, or this
is
would be for
only
the other countries?
Barbados. The other countries, I will give them another hour past that, so definitely sometime into tonight. I say the all clear for the Caribbean should be about midnight tonight.
Okay, thank you very
And
much.
that's the Eastern Caribbean.
Eastern
That's the
Caribbean.
Eastern
Eastern
Caribbean.
Caribbean, yes. Because again, as it moves into the Caribbean Sea, there is a high potential for rapid development. It is expected to go from a tropical storm to a hurricane, and that will up the status for those Western Caribbean islands, especially Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba, as we go forward. And if it makes that sharp turn, we also have to look at the Turks and Caicos and Bahamas as well.
Can I just
Sure,
make
go
one
ahead.
quick point? It's important that people listen to the all clear from the relevant sources in their communities or countries, but also to remember that once the rain stops and the winds stop, it doesn't necessarily mean that the situation is safe in some countries. You have to still factor in that there may be landslides, there may still be potential flooding to evolve, and so I think it is important that
And there may be
people,
fallen power lines.
yes,
Absolutely.
I think that it is
Absolutely.
important that people really listen to the relevant authority in the country just to make sure that people can stay safe, and we can have no significant accidents.
There's one issue I want to confront. I don't think we should dodge it, so to speak. I think there is the dialogue that ensues when the government seeks to call for the country to shut down, and there is a lull in terms of what would have been the expected time of impact, and this view that there was certainly a mistake made. And what we're seeing here is something that we need to understand, that meteorology can never be a precise science because we're dealing with nature. What our meteorologists do is work with the best information they have to give the population enough time to be in a safe situation rather than to face the onslaught with less time. Now, things are dynamic, and so it may change in terms, as Kathy Ann said, the speed. So an expected impact time for midnight may end up being 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the morning or 8 because it's dynamic. But certainly the conditions that are seen are what's being reported. So we really want to encourage persons to really develop that confidence in the meteorologists and recognize that the nature is dynamic and it can change. But what we're seeking to do is to ensure that people are secure. If we don't do that and it continues on its trajectory and we fail to deliver that information, then we would be derelict in our duties. So I wanted to put that plug in for the National Disaster Offices and the Met Offices.
Good. Now we can ask the members of the media here if there are any questions you'd like to pose to the gentleman and the lady at the table. You can do so now.
Well, Ms. Siegel is able to answer the question of when we could perhaps expect...
Can you identify yourself?
So I am Denise Blackman from the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation.
Yes.
When we could expect an all clear, which would be around 7 p.m. tonight, perhaps.
I would say all clear from the weather, all clear from the situation, because as Dr. Farrell said, all clear once the rain stops and the wind stops blowing. We have to now look at the potential for damage, and we have to now the appropriate authorities have to go out and ensure that the conditions are safe for our population. So the all clear would come from the government. In terms of the weather, I expect a gradual improvement sometime later this evening. I say for a safe gauge would be about 7 o'clock tonight and going forward.
Okay, and if you could expound now exactly how, during that time until then, if this is the worst that it may get.
No, actually, no, we're on as I said, the center actually went through this morning. So we're starting to see winds predominantly from the south. So that usually says that we're on what they call the backside or the wake side of the storm. So we should see an improvement. I think that the conditions, given what we've been seeing on the satellite imagery, would continue to be in this stage. You will see ebbs and flows. You'll see possibly a sudden drop in the wind speeds, but it could actually be followed by sudden increases as you get these squalls going through. So again, it is best to remain indoors. The conditions if you are forced to get in a position where you have to leave your home, again, gauge your situation. But this could be the expected conditions until then, and you'll see a gradual improvement into tonight.
Heatherlyn Evanson, Nation newspaper. Can you give us some idea of how much rainfall has been recorded so far?
Not the rainfall so far. Well, when I left, when I got to the briefing, we hadn't started seeing the rains yet, so I haven't been looking at the information so far. But we're seeing when we're looking at, I can gauge from what I saw from St. Lucia, we're seeing a gradual increase, possibly in the region of maybe about 50 millimeters of rainfall so far. But there was a potential for, as I said, 150 to 300 millimeters behind that. So we're looking at the system. We should have a better idea later on this evening.
Just to follow up on that, in some areas so far where we have rain gauges and so on, we've seen about 4 inches of rainfall so far over Barbados. Mm-hmm. And that number will continue to rise.
Right.
Okay. Any more questions? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to give you one last opportunity to, I'm going to start with the lady. Ladies first, we're always first. But I'm just going to give you one more opportunity to make the necessary appeal or to impart the necessary information to not just the folks here in Barbados who are already experiencing this tropical storm, but to the rest of the region who are awaiting it.
Okay, so currently for those in Barbados, we are experiencing tropical storm force conditions. The winds are going to be strong. They're going to be associated with heavy rainfall, and the possibility of flooding is very definite. You're going to see those squalls continue and gradually decrease in Barbados. However, for the other islands, as we move into St. Lucia, and Dr. Farrell would talk about this as well, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Dominica to some extent, they can see in gradually the situation becoming worse as we move into tonight, and with a gradual improvement into later tonight. For our colleagues in the Western Caribbean, they have to look out this weekend, continue monitoring the situation as this system is expected to mature into a hurricane, and it could be significant, so they have to be continue monitoring their local services for information.
Okay.
Well, I just encourage the population in all of these countries that are facing the challenges and the challenges to come to help their national emergency management mechanism to be successful by ensuring that they are preparing themselves, that they are evacuating from areas that they know are traditionally areas that are likely to flood, or if they know they're living in very substandard housing conditions and may face a problem, to go to the shelter early. Mm-hmm. This will relieve the burden that can be presented with the National Emergency Management Mechanism. So to help them, work with them so that overall the national response can be successful.
Dr. Farrell?
Yes, the CIMH will continue to work with all parties involved to ensure that we have a somewhat positive outcome to this particular event. One of the things that we would like to do, and which we have started to do, is to collect information on impacts. We think that this is extremely important for us to reconstruct the history of events, but also to work to make things better the next time around. And so one of the things we have started to do is to collect impacts from the media, through media sources, through other groups, civil society, as well as populations in general. And so this is something that we would urge people to do. Sometimes you take a little picture and just for your own purposes, but some of these pictures are extremely useful for us when we start looking at impacts and how the event unfolded. And so one of the things that I would like to see is if we can rely a bit more on the population to report things to us. Sometimes we may question the information, but I think it is extremely important that we try to get some of this information and collect the information and collect a history of what has happened. And the Institute is working a lot in that area now, looking at impacts and impacts forecasting. So I appeal to people to, if you have pictures, you have video, and so on, to share that information with us to help us to do a much better job in the future and continue to try to save lives and property as we go forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Farrell, Mr. Jackson, and Ms. Caesar for sharing this information, giving us a regional overview of the tropical storm Matthew. Ladies and gentlemen of the region, this has been a very special press briefing from the Caribbean Disaster Management Emergency. Let me take that again. It's from the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, Cdema, and the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, CIMH. Thank you very much for being part of this. We will endeavor to bring you more information as it comes to hand, but we encourage you to stay safe in whichever territory you are. So far, the warning has been for the territories of Barbados, St. Lucia, Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Guadeloupe, and Martinique. That's what the warning has been for so far. We encourage you to stay tuned to your local radio stations, stay tuned to Carib Vision, and as far as we get information, we will be sharing with you. Stay safe, have yourselves a good afternoon.